So welcome everyone. I'm really excited to co-host this event with the Chicagoland Food and Beverage Network. Alan and the organization have been instrumental in really pushing for the development of the food and beverage industry here in the Chicagoland area, but also nationwide. And today we have a really important topic that pretty much every brand is dealing with right now, and a great panel to talk through it. So we're going to be talking about, during COVID, how are brands actually driving awareness and trial with everything going on? So we know that with grocery stores kind of rushing people in and out, there's no longer demos, there's safety hazards, obviously, when sharing food. But food is such a visceral experience in terms of having to taste a product, especially for new brands, to really understand from a consumer point of view if you actually like the product and if you want to become a customer. So we've had to get creative. And we'll be talking about some of those creative measures with today's panel. So I'll do a quick introduction of everyone who's joining, and then we'll jump into have each of the panelists give a little bit more of a background about themselves, and we'll get right into the topic. Throughout the presentation, if you have any questions at all, please add those to the Q&A or chat, and we'll ask those ongoing, and have a little bit of time at the end for some open discussion and Q&A there. So the four panelists I have joining me, and I'll kind of give you a little bit about myself as well if you don't know. So Jordan Buckner, I run T-Squares, which is a line of superfood energy bites. I've been doing that for about 5 years, and also launched FOODBEVY as an online community to support food and beverage founders, helping providing them with the resources to grow from startup to scale. So today my panelists are Clark Nowlin, the CEO of Golden Ratio, Shibani Beluja with Little Gourmets, Pete Maldonado with Chops, and Regina Trio with Nimi Holy Sticks. So starting from the top, Clark, why don't you just give a quick introduction of yourself? I know you have a fun background as well, so everyone can get to know you.
Yeah, thanks for inviting us to be here, Jordan. This is really fun. My name is Clark Nowlin. I live in Austin, Texas, and I used to be a full-time touring musician, and I invented a new kind of coffee called Gold Coffee that I do now, and we are on a mission to start the day the golden way and help people do the same. It's a golden coffee. Basically, it's beans without the burn is what we say. And so we launched the company a little over 100 days ago in June, and it's been a fun ride since. I've served thousands of customers, have seen lots of unforeseen things happen, just like everybody who had a plan in 2020 in business. You kind of had to throw it away and start with a new one. So yeah, it's a little bit about me. I'm excited to talk about that today.
If you look Clark up too, you'll find that he's also a talented musician and has a lot of cool stuff there.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Shibani, how about you?
Hi, everyone. I'm Shibani Beluja. So prior to starting Little Gourmets, I spent about a decade at Kraft Foods. And my family was always in the restaurant industry. So I've always been in food, but never intended to be an entrepreneur. But when I became a mom, I saw a real deficiency in the kids' food market. And so launched Little Gourmets, and we're all about getting kids to eat more veggies, eat really a lot of more flavorful food, and help develop them into kind of lovers of vegetables and flavorful foods.
Excellent. Pete?
Yep, I'm Pete Maldonado. I'm the CEO and co-founder at Chomps, and we make better for you meat sticks. So we've been doing this since 2012. Back when we launched this thing, there weren't a lot of opportunity or a lot of options for grass-fed and finished, or free-range antibiotic-free turkey, or sugar-free options. But since then, there's been a lot of newcomers to the category, which it's become a very crowded space, which drives innovation, and I think it kind of forces everyone to do a little bit better. It's pretty exciting. But we started as a direct-to-consumer brand, and after 4 years, we finally made our way to retail shelves. So we launched at Trader Joe's, was our first retailer. And we've been kind of springboarded out of that into other channels and retailers. So, yeah.
Excellent. And Regina?
Hola, my name is Regina, and I am the founder of Nemi Holistics, and I make plant-based crunchy sticks made from nopales, which is a prickly pear paddle, also known as cactus, and seeds in Mexican-inspired flavors. And I grew up in Mexico City. I moved to Chicago 9 years ago, and as Shibani, I didn't think of myself as a food entrepreneur. I'm a human rights attorney, and that's also what I've been for the past 12 years until I started going to grocery stores here in Chicago and seeing that a lot of the Mexican brands that I was trying to find authentic Mexican products, and I was seeing that a lot of the brands were not really selling authentic Mexican products or authentic Mexican flavors. And with that in mind, and with also trying to find a chip that still had that crunch and flavor that we look for in chips, but that was nutrient dense, I created Nemi Holistics in March 2019.
Excellent. So the first question I want to dive right in is really taking a look, rolling back and talking about what your strategy was for discovery and trial pre-COVID and how that's changed over the last couple of months. So why don't you start in talking about kind of what you've done before and what worked, and then what you've had to pivot to now.
Just take it.
Yeah, go for it, Clark.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so our challenge is an interesting one. So I discovered a type of coffee in the Pacific Northwest that ultimately inspired Golden Ratio. Got some here, making a little cup so y'all can see what it looks like. But yeah, it's something I discovered there, and it's primarily served in coffee shops. And so I flew up to Seattle in January 2019 and played dumb in the coffee shops that sold this kind of new kind of coffee. And I was like, what is this? Like, I like regular coffee. Why do I drink this new kind of coffee? And they'd say, oh my gosh, it's so much less acidic. It's easier on your stomach. Or, oh, the flavor is really smooth. You mix it with a dirty chai, you know, it's the smoothest chai I've ever had. Or, oh, the caffeine's amazing. So basically gave me kind of the product market fit, like insights that I needed to, you know, kind of go on and start this business. And we ultimately, you know, repositioned it to gold coffee and have, you know, changed the roast a little bit. But the thing is, I just put this together and nobody's ever heard of it. And so the model that I found that was working in the Pacific Northwest of selling through food service and cafes is one that I did a trial here in Austin and saw the same things happen. Where over half the baristas I talked to in Seattle who were drinking this new kind of coffee, or they had switched to drinking this new kind of coffee instead of regular coffee. I did a trial here in Austin, saw the same thing. We're the top 3 best-selling drink on the menu. And so my go-to-market strategy to launch the business this summer, you know, in January was, okay, I'm going to do a lot of food service, a lot of cafes, and I'm going to get some liquid on lips. These people are they're naturally evangelizing it. This is a really good thing. Somebody who wants to build a business, there are people who actually, you know, are down to promote this. This is amazing. And then, you know, the pandemic hit, and I realized these places where I can go and get a lot of trial and kind of knock several birds out with one stone is precisely what is not in demand in 2020. And so basically we shifted our strategy, which fortunately we'd already laid the foundation and the supply chain and everything to do direct consumer, because I knew that was the first financial milestone we needed to hit to really ensure the viability of our, you know, perpetual existence as well as, you know, financial success for our stakeholders. And with that, I decided to really just double down on direct consumer, kind of out of necessity, because you know the food service plan was not going to be one that worked well. Ironically, that, you know, is a more expensive business plan to execute. So I ended up, you know, raising twice the money I thought I was going to raise just because the business model is a more expensive one to execute. But that's been my primary shift, really, is moving away from the food service plan that we'll get back to one day, and really shifting to only direct consumer. So that's why we sell these products. They're light, can ship them in the mail for under £1, get good USPS pricing, blah, blah, blah. But that's kind of the main shift.
So Clark, in making that shift, I mean, I think that's a good pivot and something you definitely have to do, and everyone's moving to e-commerce now. What are some of the things that you've done to get that awareness on e-com, right? Because so many people are vying for your attention, for your eyes right now. Yeah, so we decided to create this mug. It says "Be Golden." It's part of our, you know, branding and mantra. Hey, start the day the golden way. What's a life made up of other than days? Don't have regret in life. Be glad you did, not wishing you had. And so we thought, given that's a new kind of coffee that's literally gold, you can see here, the best thing we could actually do is create a moment for our customers in which they could showcase what is distinctly different about us, because there's so many new brands out there, and to stand out is hard. But for us,
it's actually our core differentiators that we really do stand out. You just say, this is coffee, and people go, you're smoking crack. This is not coffee. This is, that's tea. And so we did an influencer campaign where we sent a bunch of these glass mugs out so that they could, show to their audiences that this is coffee, and then have people go like, what the heck? You're smoking crack. That's not coffee. Like, oh, actually, it is coffee. It's this new kind of coffee, gold coffee, blah, blah. And then provided the right opportunity to kind of share who we are and what our value proposition is. But that, I think, is probably the most successful thing that we did to kind of help in this pivot was enable folks to be kind of ambassadors for us in a way that we actually didn't have to ask them to do it, because people like to already take pictures of their coffee in the morning. And so we just kind of gave them something that fit naturally into their current routine. So yeah, we sent, to a bunch of influencers was one, and we're actually about to open these up to our regular customers, because we realized, wait a second, our customers are literally asking to buy these things from us. Why would we not, create more ambassadors for the company? I mean, they already exist. Let's just, unleash them to be, even better ambassadors for the company. So yeah, I think that's probably the most the easiest little trick we found just for our business that has been really helpful.
Yeah, I love that. So taking kind of a viral kind of moment, creating a product that was branded for you, but not like overtly shoving your logo in their face, but just really talking about that day part in the morning coffee routine and creating evangelists from that. And I think it's really powerful. So that's great. Pete, how about you? I know you've been doing this for a little while now. You have a strong e-commerce business. What changed for you because of COVID, and what were things like before?
Yeah, I mean, because obviously you're not going to have that face-to-face physical contact with people post-COVID. Pre-COVID, but we already had some things in place that allowed us we were able to scale those things once COVID kind of hit. One of the ones that we had was a vendor partner of ours called Pebble Post. So the way that they work is, you imagine any kind of remarketing or retargeting that you do digitally. So if someone lands on your website, you're basically able to go use their IP address and feed them ads using the standard ad platforms, right? But what this vendor partner is pretty cool, because what it allows you to do is target those same people via their IP address. It gets their physical address, and then you can do a direct mailer to them. So you're actually sending them a postcard, you're sending them a coupon to go pick up a free stick at any of the local stores nearby, or you can give them like a coupon code to go back to your website and buy that way. But the best, it's great for us to be able to let them go to the store, go get the free stick, and then if they like it, they're going to go back and probably buy it at that same store. So we found that it's been incredibly effective, not only with direct to consumer, but then also in store.
Yeah, I love that. And just to rewind, because I think that's really important. So for a lot of brands, a consumer will come to your site, they'll take a look at the product, and maybe they get distracted, or for whatever reason, they decide not to buy it that moment. And so you're able, through this partner Pebble Post, to then retarget them, not just digitally, but actually physically, send a postcard to their home, send a sample to their home. So then they get a surprise gift from you, or a coupon that enables them to go into the store and get that free sample.
Yeah, the only thing they won't let you do samples.
Okay.
I thought that was actually part of the service. I clarified that just yesterday. Actually, I was speaking to them, but they won't hold inventory, but they will hold, postcards for direct mailers. So but again, if you give them like a free go get a free stick, go get a free product at the store, that's a good way to drive trial. So.
I love that. Shabani, how about you? I know you had a really fun strategy pre-COVID of working with pediatrician offices and a couple of others to get your products into consumers' hands. What was working really well about that, and how have you had to pivot?
Yeah, so we're a kids product and a really unique one. We're also a refrigerated product, and so it's the good and the bad of being something unique, right? The placement in store doesn't necessarily give you an idea of what we are. And so we always need to really educate our consumers that even if we're sitting in yogurt, we're a plant-based product, or if we're sitting wherever we're sitting, there's nothing else like us. So that's always been a struggle. So I think in store, we really were focused on demos. We have a really high repeat rate. There's not a lot of baby foods that would do demos because they don't, adults don't really want to try them. And so it was actually really interesting in doing so many demos is that we learned that a lot of millennials were enjoying our product. And so I think we wouldn't have known that were we not doing demos pre-COVID. And but then at the same time of doing the demos, we would also be surround sounding our stores. And so pre-COVID, our retail presence was pretty limited. And so we could reach out to kind of local mom-focused businesses, pediatricians, daycares, and really try to just get to our consumer in a much more focused way than you could standing in an aisle. And so some of that has continued, right? People weren't going to pediatricians as much for a little while, but you have to at this point, and parents have to for vaccinations and for whatever else they need to. So that part has continued, and I think it's a good strategy for us. Pediatricians like our product because it is kind of really good for kids. So we've continued that, and I think we've just started looking more. We used to be able to walk into some of these kid-focused businesses and really just offer them something that they could offer to their consumers, and it was kind of a win-win. We've really tried to see a lot of these businesses are struggling, whether they're gyms or kids' play places. So we're trying to come up with a program where there can be some sort of mutual benefit to really try to scale that. So I think a lot of things for us have continued, and fortunately for us, we've also expanded doors during this time. So now we can really try to implement some of these ideas that we had about surround sounding stores in a bigger way. I will say, related to what Clark and Pete were saying, thinking about pivoting more to direct to consumer. For us, being a refrigerated product, it's difficult to get a sample to someone remotely. So we've turned more to coupons, like Pete was just saying. So we are trying to use, whether it's ambassadors or whoever it may be, kind of building connections with a network that then builds connections with their network and distributes those coupons. So really, I think we're doing so many things that we would have done even outside of COVID, just as a function of getting into more stores and not being and being in a broader geographic region than we were pre-COVID, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally does. So, I mean, it's an interesting shift too, because I think it was really great in terms of finding out like who your advocates are and who are the people that are going to tell your story early on, and going to those daycares. And we talk a lot about like alternative channels, things other than retail or grocery, as a way to reach new customers. So I think that's brilliant. But obviously those in-person locations, similar to what Clark experienced, are no longer as available, or you don't want to be handing too many things to people in those environments. And so being able to pivot through that, I think is important. And I think especially, some of these things that you're doing along the launch of, you're launching in Target locations, have like a lot of really good opportunities coming up. So yeah, continuing to like trial these various methods to figure out, what's going to be most successful and really develop those sales.
Yeah, we're totally in a test and learn. I mean, and we're trying a lot of things. Like we just launched into a new store in North Shore, Chicago. So I'm doing a farmer's market in that city on Saturday. It's just, what can we can't do in stores. So what can we just do to surround sound the stores? And of course, a lot of grassroots, but then as you expand your geography, you just have to find the advocates that can be there where you can't be.
Completely. All right. So Regina, what has been your experience? I know you were doing some really cool things with influencers even before the pandemic. How has that changed, or is there anything that you're doing differently now?
Yes. I mean, I definitely had to do a change in strategy, because at the beginning, I wasn't really doing a lot of direct to consumer. I had some presses, but that wasn't my main focus. I was focusing a lot in awareness, because with the new product, there is an educational component of the prickly pear paddle, the cactus nopal. And that's always been part of, an important part of how I'm communicating the brand and what I'm doing to foster that awareness and education. But it was pretty much until March this year that I had to change a lot of my outreach strategy, because I depended a lot on demos and events. Pretty much after working hours and during the weekends, I was doing events every weekend. And that was a way for me to connect with my consumer in more in a physical way, and pretty much get all the feedback from there. And when those stopped, I had to find a way to continue bringing in the snack into people's hands. And that meant for Nemi, and so this is the snack. And one of the things that customers say all the time that I was able to get that info from demos is the crunchiness of the snack. So this is the snack. Can you hear the crunchiness? Yes. So I really wanted people to continue talking about that. And I had very specific asks when I started connecting with bloggers and influencers. Some of the campaigns that I did were awareness campaigns, and it was very specific on please do a live demo and talk about these things. And then getting also feedback from them, doing like a second round of feedback to whoever was getting my product. At the beginning, I also started doing some cooking demos using the product. It was challenging because I think one of the things that we didn't know at the beginning is how long will this last for? So there were also some strategies that I thought about at the beginning that I thought, for a short period of time, but then it started getting longer and longer. And I'm like, okay, this is not sustainable anymore. I need to do something different again and try to connect in a different way. There were a lot of connections too, and I still build on partnerships and collabs with like-minded brands. And even, with or places, not necessarily a brand, but maybe places that are connecting also with my kind of consumer, that are doing a lot of live videos and demonstrations, and I'm kind of connecting with that piece as well. And as Shabani mentioned, a lot of it has been just testing, see if it works, see if it doesn't. A lot of the places that I was selling to closed, so a lot of the cafes closed. So I also started working with a lot of other e-commerce brands and third-party platforms that mostly do e-commerce and subscriptions, and that has been helpful too. And just I keep testing it out and seeing what works and what doesn't, because this is, we're gonna continue doing this for a little bit more time.
Yeah, I remember the videos that you were putting out at the very beginning, and they're great, right? They allow people to get to know you, see your personality, and build a connection to you as the founder. And I think that's so important, especially for new brands, to know, the person or the people behind the product, behind the name, so that they can build a more authentic connection, feel like they're not just supporting you, but everything that you represent, the lifestyle and everything like that. So I think that's powerful. But like you said, it's hard to maintain that because you're not, a cooking show, and that takes like a whole line of production. So I know there's like hours and hours of work that happen
Right.
to put those videos together. So I think that's,
and I was doing that on a weekly basis.
yeah.
And then I think it was like mid-May or something, or like late May, when I was like, okay, I don't know if I can continue doing this every week.
It takes a lot out of you.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. But I think what was really powerful and something that I saw really great brands doing was in having to interact on social media, right? A lot of brands will put forth like their product and just very kind of, like salesy materials. But if you think about, the basis of social media, it's all about people, and it's all about drawing that genuine connection to yourself or your community or other people who are your followers. And so I think having that kind of personal touch really draws a lot in terms of getting more followers and people to tell your story, which helps. All right, so I think there's a lot of really great info in there and some good learnings. Did anyone have any experience of other things that you tried that you thought might be successful, but wasn't successful, or anything that failed?
Yeah, so I have a background work-wise in between being touring musician and starting this company, doing like B2B like partnership sales for a music festival here in Austin, and that's where I got introduced to food and beverage. Tito's is our largest sponsor. Austin has a great food and beverage community here, and anyway, so I met a bunch of folks through that, and I thought, okay, with this pandemic happening, and we've got a skill set within our company of being able to get people interested within companies, and okay, maybe this could be my one stone that can knock out several birds, if you will, using that same analogy. And so I called on the office managers of Facebook, I called on the office managers of Google, and got on the phone with these people. We already had yeses from Bumble, the dating app here in Austin, as well as Outdoor Voices and a couple other brands. I thought, okay, this is going to be the pivot plan. We can do co-pros of these brands. They're going to get their well-paid employees, spreading the golden gospel and starting the day the golden way. It's going to be great. And the budgets of those companies, this might be more or less private information for their businesses, I'm not quite sure, but I'll just let y'all know. And on the secret, they've cut them all. The job perk of working at those companies is that you have a job. And so they're not spending on like employee items. And I thought, oh, we could convince them to maybe give a little gift to their employees, little coffee. People are at home. Businesses like to give their people coffee because coffee makes their people do stuff that helps the business. And so I thought this is going to be an easy sell, and it totally flopped. That we had one of our investors, he's got a company of like 70 employees. And so he bought basically for wholesale from us, like a bunch to send to his employees. And I thought, okay, this is great. And I'll get his friends and whatnot to do this. And we tried. And other than just, one person who had already cut a big check to be involved with our company, taking part of that's like a B2B D2C is what I called it. That was like the traction channel we were trying to generate. It just totally flopped. So I haven't given up on it. I still think that there's something there, but we have done nothing but just find nothing thus far and trying to make it happen.
No, I think it was interesting because for T-Squares, that was a really big, that was a big part of our go-to-market strategy. And we were working with tons of offices up and down the West Coast and Chicago and throughout. And we were shipping pallets of T-Squares out to some of these offices to really develop that habitual kind of eating routine, which definitely helped. But once COVID hit, a bunch of offices shut down. A number of the tech offices are actually, like Twitter, they're kind of moving their employees indefinitely to remote. And so there's a big kind of consideration of up in the air of like when offices are coming back. And some of them are doing shipments to consumers' homes, but even those are not as frequent, right? It's different getting a one-time shipment versus getting your coffee in the morning every single day and having it that way. So yeah, I think that's tough. Anyone else have any experiences to share?
So I've got, well, something that we have always really done is spending a lot of money advertising on search and social. That's for prospecting, so building top of funnel. And what we found is that overnight with COVID is that every company, if they had a very small direct-to-consumer platform or non-existent, they'd realize right away that they need to get into e-commerce, right? And so for what happened, I think, and especially in our category, is that there was a lot of brands that didn't really have much of a presence on e-commerce. And so they were suddenly bidding on the exact same, search terms that we were, driving up CPAs, driving up costs for the entire category. And at some point, it just makes it an unprofitable endeavor, right? And so it's for everybody in the entire category. I mean, it was, prices were already going up and getting more and more expensive. But COVID just accelerated those costs. And so what happened was when COVID first hit, I think, it became, it was kind of, you're tone deaf if you're still kind of like out there spending a bunch of money in advertising. So overnight it was like, okay, let's just turn it off. And then what we found is that even though we turned off all of that prospecting, our sales were still growing. Revenue is still growing. We were still on that same trajectory we were on pre-COVID. And so we were like, okay, let's turn this off for, it might be a week or two. Let's just untest it to see what happens. And then we're like, okay, we're 2 months into this now and revenue's still growing and we're not burning a bunch of cash with search and social. So for us, it kind of opened our eyes to saying, before COVID, we were just burning cash. We don't really even know how effective it really was. And the fact of the matter is there's a a lot of other things that you can do that would be more profitable ways of building top of funnel. So we're looking to do more and more of those things, and it's getting really creative and innovative about how do you approach the customer for that initial touch point. So I think that's a big thing that all brands are going to have to do, right? And so that was a big, important learning for us, though, and it moved the needle significantly for us. So we're very happy to find that out. So it's unfortunate way to find it out, but it was a good, better late than never, though.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, there's been this, I don't know if Facebook is pushing it, but this marketing apparatus that's really saying brands, when they launch, they need to start with Facebook ads. They need to start with Instagram ads. Like that's one of your first investments to do. It will happen so much, I'm sure, between even the people on this call right now, like we've wasted millions of dollars in ads that aren't quite converting just because the rest of the funnel isn't built out and it doesn't make as big of an impact on your business if people are even coming to your site and then leaving because you don't have your messaging figured out.
Yeah. And so for us, I think what we found that from the remarketing and retargeting perspective, it's still important to keep that budget. And it's not like you're just abandoning all of those advertisements altogether. It's a matter of trying to figure out the best way to do it. So now we feel that from the initial touch point, the initial prospecting and top of funnel, they have to already be in the funnel and have already seen either your website or some sort of education about your product. And then we feel that your second touch point with via retargeting or remarketing, that could be on those channels. But and content is key, though. Content's key for sure. You can't just be throwing up just a picture of the product with very little text or talking about it, right? So we're constantly testing various types of content.
Have you found, I mean, we can take a look at your ads, but like, have you found any specific types of content that tend to resonate more than others?
UGC. Yeah. User generated content. Yeah. So, it could be customers that you've worked with or that customers that just post stuff and you reach out to them and say, hey, are we allowed to use that content? Or might be influencers that you've worked with. But yeah, those definitely convert.
I see Clark agreeing. And
People
Regina,
love to watch other people consuming food or beverage product. But that is like the most it's the easiest sell to others is that they just see others drinking it. Like, oh, well, if they're drinking it, it must be good. It's really funny, but it's true.
Yeah, it's that form of like social trust, right? Like even if you don't know the person, just seeing someone else and that's, really drinking the product or eating it and their experience, or, like Christina, like with your products, right? Hearing that crunch when someone bites into it and seeing like the surprise look in their face, like, oh, this is really good, right? Like people can relate to that and imagine themselves having that experience.
Yeah, we just stopped investing in creating lifestyle content or like lifestyle imagery, which is basically just, models looking cute and really high quality pictures drinking products, and it's great. They're fine pictures. It doesn't offend anybody, but if you look at the engagement on our profile, they're by far the least engaged piece of content that we create, and the most engaged is exactly what Pete said. It's other not model, just normal humans out in the wild, on their phone taking a video doing their thing. That is way more of a trust builder and a piece of engaging content, at least what we've seen on our stuff.
Awesome.
And one thing that I think it's clear from what we're seeing on our experiences and how when Pete was talking about advertising, there really isn't one size fits all. It really depends on your brand, what stage you are, how you're connecting with your consumer. At the beginning also, when everyone was starting doing ads, and I looked at some data and I knew that I didn't have the budget that I required to really stand out with other competitors on Facebook. So I knew that was just going to be a waste of money if I went into that. So it was about finding this space of, okay, how can I continue communicating? Because also a lot of people were getting, I don't know if you're working with influencers, but they're getting slammed, right? Also from other brands as well. And how am I going to continue connecting with my consumer in the most authentic way for the brand, to communicate the brand? And that's not always easy. It's challenging and it changes all the time as well. But at least for Nemi, that's what's working and what I'm still trying to figure out.
I love that. So question for everyone. So Chris Mahoney asked, have any of you worked with crowdsourcing companies for product demos, reviews, and really thinking more like influencer companies where you pay a company to bring in influencers, or have you been reaching out to them yourself?
So I can share what we're doing. Over the summer, we worked with an agency to find us influencers, and I'm not sure it's anything we would repeat again. I mean, we got great content, we got really great feedback, but I can't tell if it really drove sales, truthfully, because I think, again, like we had made the decision that strategically being a retail focused business was better for us and the prospects of our company than a DTC. But of course, with all this happening, we tried to see, could we push the DTC, and like others here did things that didn't work out so well. And I think that was one of them. Now we've contracted with a company, and so we're testing something where they are, we've given them basically, we want moms with ages this age kids, and in these zip codes, again, just help us surround sound the stores to see if it works. And then I think, but I think it's something that we're trying to see if we can bring in-house. I think it'll be smaller when we bring it in-house. We're two of us at this point. But I do think it's an effective way. But again, for us, it's being in that 3 to 5 mile radius. Because even actually, as we've launched into new stores, I can see the correlation of new customers. And I, every once in a while, I just kind of look at the cities where we're getting new customers, and they are where we have stores. So again, like driving that trial in store is really what's helping even our direct to consumer business now, versus doing things and asking someone to just order, $60 worth of product, which is what we really try to push for to be profitable, is a difficult ask.
Yeah, definitely hear you on that. Regina, I know like you've been reaching out to people individually. Like, what's your process for doing that kind of generally? How do you find influencers?
Yes, I usually reach out individually, and I try to find people that are connected with my target market or are in my target market. And I look at their audience, I look at their engagement, and I try to find this connection piece with Nemi and with this person and their audience. And I'm very honest about the ask and about telling them that I'm not paying them as well. And it usually works. And I have received positive results from that kind of engagement.
I love that. Another question that came up in the Q&A, Marin asked, has anyone used Ibotta or worked with Social Nature? No, Pete, have you used them at all?
We've used Ibotta. I think mixed results for us specifically. In terms of driving new trial, I think it's a very specific, it's a smaller subset of customers, I think, that buy our products at stores or finding them on Ibotta. Although I will say though, that we don't dedicate a huge budget towards, you could actually market on Ibotta and you could put a bunch of spend behind it. We don't really do that. I feel like part of the reason that we don't do that yet, and we're still very early in a lot of these retailers, and what we want to know for our own knowledge is how are you actually going to perform on shelf. And so I feel like we're a little premature to be starting to spend on Ibotta and doing that type of stuff. So in my mind, we like to know what our true velocities are going to be. We don't want to be propping them up with spending a bunch of money on Ibotta, because that's a never ending cycle, right? And you'll never get out of that. So we just want to really know how the product's going to perform on shelf before we start spending like that. So we'll see. We might do some more testing with it and to see how it goes over time. But as of now, not much.
Yeah, the brands that I've heard that have had success on Ibotta, we're working with Walmart primarily and really pushing for those sales in Walmart to get their velocities up kind of during that period, right? And like it's really about just like their performance numbers during that time period. But I don't know if they were actually that netted them any like returning or repeat customers.
Yeah, it's just not sustainable. We're just trying to figure out the best ways to be sustainable, and not just in we don't want to be propping up velocities to prop up velocities. That does nothing for anybody, right? So yeah.
It's called Firefest.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
Oh,
well, I mean, it's the same thing as like just buying distribution. You could
Yeah.
shell out as much money in slotting fees and I landed 10,000 doors this year. Great. What are your velocities? And, what if when they go away in, a year from now, that's not sustainable. I think a lot of brands now are smartening up to that. And hopefully there's a big shift, but people should start thinking more about velocities and that type of thing and those other metrics that actually matter versus distribution growth, new doors, and this type of Ibotta, propped up velocities. So
Yeah, definitely hear that.
A quick note on that too. To anybody who's starting a food business or started one, I will share. I closed our first round of financing last week on our first down month sales wise, because in our investor update, I said, hey, we are using the monies that have been invested in us as learning monies, not burning monies. And we're not going to artificially keep propping up top line growth just on ad spend, because we know we can, and doesn't help anybody. It is of no utility to anybody. So we're going to learn with this money, not burn this money. Sent the email and we closed the round within 3 hours of sending that email out. So know that, don't be chasing just, endless growth for growth's sake. If it's just all sugar and there's no meat and potatoes to it, because people do. I mean, it's the right thing to do. Like what Pete said, focus on the velocities. Where's their truth? Where do we really resonate? And don't, steer away from that. And even if you feel like you need to, that's just one story of the alternative to hopefully encourage anybody that feels like they need to spend more money on these platforms than they need.
I appreciate that, and congrats on the closing the fundraising round, Clark. I think that's huge, and I think it's everyone. As you all know, the food business is not a exponential growth curve, right? There's seasonality, there's dips, there's ups and downs that naturally occur, and don't be afraid of that. But you just have to learn how to talk through those with your investors or with anyone else as well. All right, so next question, Saphir asks, any advice on how to virtually solicit consumer feedback on packaging, brand messaging, product taste when you're getting started?
One thing that has worked for Nemi is since the beginning, since I launched, I've been very active in email marketing. And I think having those customers' emails and their attention is one of the best pieces of real property that a brand can have, and really put it to good use. And one thing that I've done is being very active about getting feedback and sending surveys, especially because I'm working on a rebrand too. So I need a lot of feedback from customers on that. And email marketing has been a really positive way of doing that and gathering data.
Yeah, I think that's great. There's a couple of services out there as well that allow you to kind of ship product samples to consumers and get feedback. Sophia, so if you want to shoot me a note after, I can share some of those with you and which ones have worked and which ones haven't worked, and can share that information as well. And then Anne asks, since traditional in-store demos are on hold for now, is anyone doing anything directly in the store to drive trial or sales? Pete, I don't know if you're doing anything. I know you have a smaller kind of pack size, but are you doing like full size samples, or have tried doing that in store?
Not in store, but I think one of the things that we found super successful is gift with purchases. And so that helps with a number of different things, including driving average order value, but also it's driving trial, right? So we were able to do that on our own platforms with new products that we want people to try. And we're able to do it on other third-party platforms. So Thrive Market's one of them. That's an e-commerce platform. Obviously, they're blowing up right now, and they've been blowing up with COVID. And so we do a lot of gift with purchases with them, and you're just funding the gift and helping them drive new sales. So the repeat purchase or the conversion after that has been pretty significant, and it's proved out to be ROI positive for us, actually. So we're doing that on both third-party platforms and then our own. So there really haven't been a lot of opportunities in store, like physical in store, like brick and mortar. Hopefully that'll turn around, but yeah, as of now, it's just still been really e-commerce focused.
One thing I have seen is Instacart allows you to also add a gift with purchase if you're in a certain store. And so if you order through Instacart, then those shoppers can drop product into the basket as well.
That's cool. I didn't know that. We'll check that out.
Yeah, so it's an additional service you have to pay for, but if you're really looking to do that, then you can do it. And then Ashley actually mentioned in the chat, they're working with Caputo's and their events with their food truck to pass out coupons for a free item. And so I think a lot of retailers are starting to open up to like some form of like coupons or demos in store where you're doing full samples. That gets expensive though, depending on your product and how many you actually want to give out.
We did that with a couple stores here, Jordan. Of course, we have, again, the perishable product with an expiration date. So as we get closer to an expiring batch, we definitely look for creative ways to distribute samples that we wouldn't do otherwise.
No, I think that's a good use of product, obviously, right? Instead of having to throw something away, you give it to someone while it's still good, but then they can actually try it. Shabani, maybe you can answer this part too. As you're launching in target locations, Mike was asking, like, what does that look like doing a product launch in a new geographic region during COVID?
So I think trying to think with COVID, yeah, because normally we would, place heavy emphasis on starting to do demos as soon as we launched into the locations, at least into the bigger stores. So we've invested in things like survey.com to go out and merchandise for us. We find that merchandise shelf, our velocities are much higher than kind of the placement of our pack. And I'll just show you what I mean. Like if you place our product like this, you full on see what it is, but it's much more efficient. And I don't have the cup, but imagine there's a cup in here, but most places shelve it like this. And so we've been seeing that our velocities are significantly higher if we are front facing versus side. So now we can't be everywhere when we're in these new geographies. So it's more capital intensive, of course, but we're seeing the lifts. So survey.com is something we just tried for the first time. They're doing all sorts of signage for us, again, for being a product that people don't really know what it is. It's helpful to have that extra signage on the shelf. And then it's the surround sound that we're trying to find different influencers or ambassadors that can be us. So these word of mouth campaigns where we find the parents that love our product, we give them the tools they need to then evangelize our product. And we're just getting started on this in a bigger way because we just launched into these new markets in the last month. So I'm hopeful that we're going to find kind of a recipe for success. We're starting it small, really to see how we can drive growth here. So then we have that model, because like Pete, we're really trying to figure out what's the right execution in store to get the velocities, and then take that model as we expand distribution.
I love that. So wrapping up, we just have a couple minutes left. I would love for everyone to give their one tip that you haven't discussed today that might be really effective in terms of driving that awareness or trial for a newer brand or a brand that's looking to drive that either retail or online discovery. So Shabani, how about we start with you? Is there anything else that we haven't talked about yet that you would share?
Jordan, you and I have talked about this. I think that when I think about all the things, and we have talked about most of them, right? I think grassroots is so important. Finding people that can be as close to you as possible. You're never going to find you, but to find the people that are as passionate about your product and to try to incentivize them to be you and build those word of mouth connections. I think that's so important. I think what you and I talked about was PR, and it's something we're dipping our toe back into to really. I think we talked about that the social campaigns on their own can only drive so much and are often negative ROI, especially in this environment. So if we can get some positive PR that really gets us in front of our consumers, that's something that now we're looking to do. And so as we launch into Target, and it's largely Minneapolis, you know, now we're kind of focused on that Minneapolis market and how do we get in front of parents there. So that's probably something else that we're trying to spend more time and investment on in driving.
Yeah, I love that. And just as a quick plug, like PR has been so instrumental in T-Squares and getting our store there. And if you have a really great story, if you have a social mission or a kind of change the world idea, then you'll get picked up. And then not only does the PR help, but it actually works really well to use that PR to then retarget with ads and things like that, where people will click on these news stories. So can't talk about that enough.
Yeah.
Clark?
So for sure, PR is especially helpful to build trust. And it works in different ways than you think. Like it's funny, like Forbes wrote a piece on us in July after we launched. And that was definitely like a personal phenomenon. I'm like, holy shit, Mom, look, I'm in Forbes. That was pretty fun. And I think it drove one sale. Like literally, I think it literally just drove one. But I posted on my Facebook and it drove, over 100 sales because all my friends and family like, oh, it's amazing. But now, we put on our website, put ad spend behind it. And that's really where the juice is with it. So don't expect to like get press and it's going to make your world change. It's just going to open the door for you to run through it and change your world. But, it opens a door and it's great. But it does not, just make everything happen automatically. And then for us, another thing that has been really effective, I just started doing it recently. When I applied a filter to our thousands of customers database, whatever, of like who are the ones who are buying on repeat, who's buying us over $50 AOV, who's bought recently, and who doesn't have a connection with anybody within the company. So these are not people that are friends or family. These are like legit strangers. So like I've been hopping on the phone with our top customer. He lives in Rhode Island. What's up, Sean Kegelman? And he's buying like 100 plus bucks a month on repeat for him and his wife. And so things like that are really helpful to create relationships with folks. And in Zoom world, it's like, it's normal. I might as well be his next door neighbor. So really using this time and the internet to create these meaningful connections and just doubling down on what works. Cause I can't afford to, invest in things that don't work. And if we have things that are working with certain folks, like we're just going to stay there and try to grow that instead of something else.
No, I think that's huge. And right, as you're, especially early on, but even as you're growing, right, talking to those top customers that you have, because they're so valuable that you don't want to lose them at all. And right, like that's worth, a 30-minute phone call, 15-minute phone call just to check in and make a huge difference. Regina, how about you?
Yeah, I think connecting with your consumer for awareness, for trust, for sales has been key for Nemi. A lot of them are willing to help in ways that I don't necessarily imagine if you ask them to. A lot of the doors that have opened up for Nemi, retail doors, have been because the consumer went to the store and brought the sample with them. So I also have a form that I send whenever someone asks, where are you in this state or are you in the city? No, but where do you want me to be? And this is a form, and where do you want to bring? Can you bring it to a store? Can you ask for, here are some samples? Can you bring the samples to the store? And that has been also positive for getting into retail.
I love that. Pete, final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that we were doing this year and being really intentional about is making sure that everybody on our team is out there networking. I don't know if that's going to necessarily build your brand, but what we found that some of our biggest wins come from networking, and it'll be a random tidbit of information or some tip or some introduction that happens. And so unless we're out there putting ourselves out there doing stuff like this I'm doing right now, and like talking to all of you, sharing tips, and but doing that on a daily basis or weekly basis, I feel like there's probably a lot of opportunities missed. And so we're getting, we want everybody in our team to make sure that they're networking a lot. So if you're a new entrepreneur, I just think that that's probably, and there's no cost, right? It's just getting, there's a lot of people in this industry that is willing to help. You're going to have the certain people that are going to have their hands out and they want something for it, which is fine. But for the most part, I think there's a lot of people willing to help though.
Absolutely love that. Perfect. Well, thanks so much, everyone. I hope everyone who stayed to the end, we pretty much had everyone stay to the end, but hope this was super valuable. If you have any other follow-ups, feel free to reach out to myself at hello@foodbevy.com or to Alan and the Chicagoland Food and Beverage team. Alan, any closing thoughts?
Just thank you and this terrific panel. Great great information. So many challenges in this market, and it's just awesome to see how you all are working through it. Again, thank you all, this incredible panel, Jordan and FOODBEVY, and all of the terrific attendees. Great questions, great engagement. Really appreciate it all.